Hi, it's Quainey here. Let's talk about sex. The meeting of Europe and Africa was a clash of two different attitudes towards sex. Europe was sexually repressive and Africa was sexually expressive. And this clash caused many problems. European women had been sexually repressed with the inception of Christianity in Europe, and the belief that Eve was the cause of original sin. Eve, being a woman, was blamed, and European women were blamed for sex, basically. It wasn't until the 1920s that women wore dresses that fell just below the knee. That was the first time in European history that part of their bodies up to the knee had been seen, and that was deemed exciting by European men. There's a song, in olden days a glimpse of stocking was looked on as something shocking. Now heaven knows anything goes. Africa was a completely different story with its attitude towards sex, and this caused problems for the Africans when the Europeans came. When Europeans went to Africa, their minds were literally blown because they had never seen people express themselves the way the Africans did. And their expression was sexual. Many of the dances were about attracting a partner, about showing your fitness, your fertility, about joy. We just saw the European woman dancing a waltz. So how do you think European men felt when they saw women doing this? Now, I could have showed you videos with traditional African female dancers in their traditional dress, which we would deem now as naked. They did not deem themselves as naked. Nakedness was not a word for them. That was their culture. Nakedness was a word for the Europeans. So when they came to Africa and saw Africans in their natural environment, their natural habitat, they deemed them as naked and wrong and sexual people who just wanted to have sex. That's how they were deemed. This would have a negative effect, especially on the women during the transatlantic slave trade, because they became the subject of constant rape. A rape that was allowed by the authorities. Many of those young African women who got on those slave ships were pregnant by the time they got to the Americas. So they already were having mixed race children when they first got to America. I said these things were encouraged by the authorities, by the state, by the governments, because what these governments found were that European people, men and women, were attracted to the Africans, not in a violent way. Some of them, yes, obviously was violent and took advantage of the people being in a state of slavery. But there are many cases, especially in South America, because South America had a different attitude towards interracial marriage. Because of Spain and Portugal had been occupied by the Moors for nearly 800 years, they had been mixing with Spanish, Portuguese and Africans for hundreds of years. We could say thousands of years, because there have been African skeletons found in Spain that are thousands of years old. So, and Spain is right next to Africa. You can see it from Morocco. So there had been this mixing for hundreds of years between the Spanish, Portuguese and the Africans. So Spanish Portuguese men marrying African women in South America was not unusual. It also happened in Africa, in Mozambique and in Angola, which proved problematic for South Africa, which bordered Mozambique. South Africa had a strict rules. It wasn't the official apartheid that came in 1948, I think, or 45, but they had the separation between the blacks and the whites, and they were very discouraged when they used to see over their border in Mozambique that white and blacks were happily mixing with each other and marrying each other. So as I said, these things about the mixing of the people have been discouraged by the governments because the people naturally wanted to mix, especially Europeans seeing things like this. European men wanted and did get with African women. In a violent way, yes, but also in ways that weren't violent. In South Africa, again, we have documentation of South African men having black wives, secret black wives in the townships, visiting those wives, having children and families with them, then going back to their white wives in the white sections that they lived in. You also had white women in Africa. Sorry, you had white people when they first got to Kenya, for instance. They mixed with the Maasai and started to live like the Maasai. Dress like them, act like them, and live like them. This was put an end to by the British authorities, who thought this was disgusting, and they brought in anti-miscegenation laws. They banned the interracial sexual mixing of the Kenyan blacks and the English whites. African soldiers coming to Europe during the First and Second World War caused many problems for the authorities because of white women wanted to be with the black American soldiers, African soldiers. In the First World War, there was a battalion of, I think they were Kenyan soldiers, that was banned from marching in the celebrations. Sorry, in King George, there was a King George V celebration. This is documented, I'm telling you, it's not me making it up. There's a King George V celebration, and the African soldiers were banned from marching because of the problems they caused in white women coming to see them march. Also, you had, we've all heard of and seen pictures of the African zoos, where African people were put in zoo-like environments for white people to come and see them. Where there was one that had more black African men than women, and this caused problems for the people running the zoo because the amount of white women coming to see the African men in the zoo. We see now, even in today's society, how black sexuality is copied throughout the world. Black women are the envy of women around the world. Of course, these women aren't going to tell you that. They will say it they say it in private. I remember on holiday, a white lady, a drunk lady, was talking to my wife and telling my wife how jealous she was of my wife because of her being a black woman and her skin not cracking. That's what she said to her. I'm so jealous of you, she said. And my wife's eyes popped open. This is something that happens. Black women are envied by other women around the world because of their natural beauty that is not enhanced by cosmetics, it's not enhanced by plastic surgery, it's not enhanced by makeup. It's a natural beauty that they possess and that they have, and their expression is copied. We had the phenomenon of twerking, which we always call booty shaking, and we obviously know it. We've known it for years, but suddenly Miley Cyrus did it, and it became a phenomenon. I can't even say the word, amongst white women, and suddenly twerking was this fashion amongst them, and they all wanted to do it, and they all do it, and some of them are very good at it. Don't get me wrong. I've seen some amazing white ladies twerking. They've always wanted to copy. The black Americans African Americans invented jazz music, which the white people called jungle bunny music when it first came out. But who was attracted to that music? The young, white 1920s flappers, as they called them. The white women who were rebelling against their repressed sexuality. Those are the women who first started to wear the dresses that were shorter than dresses white women had ever worn before. The flappers, they came to see the jazz musicians, and they came to dance to the jazz music. So this is what happened when Africa got into the blood of white people, and it was the women who first embraced the African women and their dancing.